Inside the darkest prisons, stories of survival and terror. Deep within the confines of the world's most notorious prisons, the air is thick with the scent of fear and despair. Hidden away from the outside world, these dark fortresses are home to the most dangerous criminals, where survival is not a given, but a fight. But within these walls, not all prisoners are destined for defeat. Some, in the face of unimaginable terror, manage to outwit their captors, survive the unthinkable, and make it out alive. In the shadows of these cells, where hope seems to have abandoned even the strongest of men, a few have found the strength to defy the odds. In today's story, we dive into the chilling tales of survival and terror inside the darkest prisons on the planet. You won't believe the lengths these prisoners went to, or the horrors they endured, in order to escape the fate that seemed inescapable. The beginning of hell. Imagine the worst day of your life. Now imagine that being your everyday reality. This is the life inside some of the most violent prisons. Prisoners are thrown into cells so small you could barely stretch your arms. Others live in constant fear, knowing that just one wrong move could cost them their life. Interview with former inmate. It wasn't the isolation that killed us. It was the people. The violence, the constant threat of being stabbed in the back. You could die any day, and nobody cared. At prisons like La Santé in France, or ADX Florence in the US, prisoners are more than just inmates. They are survivors. To live here, you need to be ready to face terror in its rawest form. Every day is a battle for your life, and every night, you wonder if you'll be alive to see the morning. The prison of terror. In these hellholes, trust is a rare commodity. The prison walls are not just physical, they are psychological. A twisted game of domai, nance, betrayal, and fear, where the strongest rule and the weakest suffer. But what happens when you refuse to play by their rules? What happens when you challenge the system? Interview with former inmate. I remember the day they tried to take me out. There was a fight in the yard, and it wasn't just any fight. It was a full-on riot. People were getting stabbed left and right. But I wasn't going to die like that. I fought back. The other inmates saw that, and that's when I knew I had a chance. For some, survival means blending into the background. But for others, it means fighting for dominance, even if it means going to war with their fellow inmates. In the worst prisons, the guards might be the least dangerous threat you'll face. The descent into madness. But there is a price to survival. In some prisons, the madness doesn't just come from the outside, it comes from within. Imagine a place where the terror becomes so familiar that you start to question your own mind. Where prisoners, once human, are pushed to the brink of insanity. Interview with psychiatrist. The effects of isolation and constant fear on a human psyche are catastrophic. I've seen men break in ways I couldn't imagine before. They go insane, but by the end, they're nothing more than shells of who they were. In these prisons, every sound, every shadow, can turn a man's mind against him. It's a mental war, one that doesn't just take away your freedom, but your humanity. And yet, some men survive, but not without paying a price. The escape. But survival is just the beginning. For some, the ultimate test comes when they make a choice: escape or die trying. The prison's walls are designed to keep you in, but the human spirit is designed to break free. In the face of torture, brutality, and despair, some prisoners will stop at nothing to escape. The question is, will they make it? Or will they become another statistic in a long line of failed attempts? Interview with former inmate. I had it all planned out, every move, every step. The guards were my biggest obstacle, but I had an advantage. They never saw me coming. It wasn't just about running away, it was about outsmarting the system that had me trapped. And in that moment, I became more than just a prisoner. I became a man who would not be beaten. Escaping a prison isn't just about breaking out. It's about surviving the mental and physical hurdles that are designed to break you down. It's about beating the system that was meant to keep you in. And sometimes, it's about becoming a ghost, vanishing without a trace. The unseen battles. But survival in the darkest prisons isn't just about physical violence. In fact, the most dangerous battles are often the ones you can't see. The battle for your mind, your soul, and your will to live. Interview with former inmate. Solitary was the worst. It's not just the isolation, it's the silence. You start to hear things that aren't there. I started to question myself. Would I ever make it out? Or would I just rot in that hole? For many, the isolation in solitary confinement isn't just a punishment. It's a test of endurance. Locked in a small cell, with nothing but your thoughts to keep you company, time stretches on endlessly. Without human interaction, the mind begins to break. And it's here, in the deep recesses of solitary confinement, that some of the most disturbing and tragic stories unfold. The corruption of power. The worst prisons aren't just defined by their walls. They are defined by the men who control them. In some of the most notorious facilities, the line between guard and prisoner blurs. Corruption, bribery, and violence infiltrate every corner of the prison. Guards who were once the enforcers of the law become the very predators that terrorize the inmates. Interview with former guard. The system was corrupt from the inside. Some of the guards were just as bad as the inmates. They'd take money from the gangs, turn a blind eye to the violence. Hell, some even joined in. That was the reality of the system I worked in. Prison guards, once seen as protectors of order, sometimes become enforcers of chaos. The inmates, once divided by gangs and rivalries, begin to form uneasy alliances with those in charge. It's a system where trust is scarce, and betrayal is the currency that keeps the entire structure running. In this kind of environment, no one is safe, not even the people who are supposed to keep the peace. Tales of escape. Every prison has escapees, those who refuse to accept their fate. But breaking out of a high-security prison is not just about finding a way out. It's about being smart, calculating every risk, and understanding that your life could be over in an instant. Interview with former inmate. I studied the prison for years. I knew when the guards rotated shifts. I knew which cameras would be down. I had it all mapped out. But the hardest part wasn't getting past the walls. It was getting past the fear of being caught, the fear of dying in the process. Every move is life or death. Every second counts. For those who try to escape, there's no margin for error. The prison walls may be the physical boundary, but it's the mental fortitude that becomes the true barrier. If you can outsmart the system, you just might make it to freedom. The cost of freedom. But for every escapee who makes it out, there's a cost. A life altered forever. Freedom is not always what it seems when you've lived so long within the confines of a prison. For some, the outside world becomes an even bigger prison. The trauma, the violence, the weight of the decisions they made, it never truly leaves them. Interview with former inmate. You think you're free, but the truth is, the prison never really leaves you. It stays with you. You carry it in your mind, in your heart. You can't escape the things you've done. And for those of us who make it out, it's a daily battle just to feel human again. The battle isn't over once you escape. In fact, for some, it's just beginning. For many, the scars left by prison are invisible, etched into their minds and souls. But despite the odds, these survivors continue to fight. They live to tell the tale, and that is their ultimate victory. Inside the darkest prisons, survival is not just about strength, it's about resilience. It's about defying the odds and rising above the chaos. But even when you escape, the battle isn't over. It's only just begun. This has been the story of survival and terror inside the world's most dangerous prisons. But there are countless stories yet to be told. The question is, who will survive? Who will overcome? And who will become a part of the darkness?